So, welcome to our expert webinar. My name is Daniela Otero. I am the CEO of Skål International. I want to say thank you to all of you for joining us today. We are more than 300 participants, Esther told me, so it's a great audience, so thank you. Also, I want to give my special thank you to you, Carina Bauer, CEO of the IMEX Group, for joining us and for stay with us for this moment and talk about, I think, very interesting topics today. Having graduated from Oxford University, UK, in politics, philosophy and economics in 1998, Carina began her career in retail and catering before entering the meetings industry in 2002 as the marketing and operation director for IMEX in Frankfurt as part of the original launch team for the exhibition. Following the expansion of the IMEX brands into America in 2009, Carina was appointed CEO of the IMEX Group. In this role, now Carina is responsible for all aspects of the business. Today, we will talk with her about leadership in time of crisis. So all participants are in the listen mode and are welcome to make comments or questions in the chat. So welcome, Carina, again.
Thank you.
COVID-19, putting leaders from all the sectors to the test. Current reality means uncertain times for companies' financial flow, or at least for those that are not large technology companies like Amazon, Microsoft, or Netflix, which, unlike others companies, have been able to double their profit during this pandemic period. For many executives, the coronavirus pandemic represents literally a crisis like none other in a recent time. So my first question is, could you give us good leadership practice in businesses to know how to act effectively when faced with this crisis?
I think, whatever the crisis is that you're faced with as a leader, I think it's very important to work with your team in a very transparent, open and authentic way. I think that's really the number one thing. Both your team and your clients want the truth from you. And I think it's very important as a leader not to try to shy away from some difficult truths and difficult messages, but to deliver those messages in a very calm and empathetic way. So that's really, at the heart of it is about telling the truth, communicating more than you've ever communicated. No communication is too much. And, being a servant leader and really being there for your clients and for your team as well.
Yeah, this is in internal way. And in the external way?
I think it's the same, as I say, it's for your clients and for your team. You need to communicate in a transparent way. You need to communicate very openly. You need to communicate a lot, and you need to be honest about what is happening. Yeah. And what the impacts are for your clients and how you can help them and work with them and how they can help and work with you as well.
Yeah, not ignore the situation because the situation exists.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes,
yeah,
quite right.
Yeah. I remember the North American magazine Forbes published a very good article, actually, with a provocative title. The title was, "What do countries with the best coronavirus response have in common?" 2 points, women leaders. The text named 7 of the 10 women who, according to the sources from United Nations, lead one of the world's 193 countries. The rest, of course, more than 180, are led by men. So my second question is, do you think that the men and the women have different styles for managing the crisis?
Yeah, so I saw that article, and obviously it's, as a female leader, you know, it's a nice article, you enjoy reading it. It's difficult to say, I think, whether there's you know, reality behind that stat. I think the one thing I would say, if you look at those female leaders in those countries, they do all communicate with a very open, transparent style, which is very different from a lot of the male politicians that we see, who are still really leading in a more old-fashioned leadership style, in a way, you know, some quite brash, and sort of strongman type style, I would call it. So whether, you know, whether history will show that those countries truly were more on top of the pandemic over a long period than others, time will tell. But I think what's interesting is the communication style of those female leaders is quite similar, very transparent, very open, very direct with their populations as to the risks that were taking place in the country and why they've taken the decisions they took. I think in terms of male and females, often there is a difference. I think at the moment, you know, the idea of emotional intelligence is so important in all aspects of business, but particularly in leadership. And I think there are plenty of men out there with very strong emotional intelligence skills. But, you know, traditionally, the women in the room have been the ones tasked with sort of the emotional intelligence. And I think, you know, 10, 20 years ago, that wasn't seen as a strong leadership skill, and that is growing now. And so I think there's an opportunity for women there, and for women leaders there, to really drive that home and really utilize those skills, and show how important they are, especially in times of crisis.
And maybe it's something that we'll need to learn, everybody, because the people need to have more skills, and these kind of skills for driving a crisis like this.
Absolutely. And, you know, you see that every day in business life. I'm sure we all know men and women who have strong emotional intelligence and who don't have strong emotional intelligence. And often it has nothing to do with their gender. It's really more about who they are as a person. But I do think that as a leadership skill is crucially important. And we can all learn from that, and we can all do better with that.
Exactly, yeah. And we know that a crisis unfold over the three time frames: for responder before the crisis, recovering for the crisis, and of course, and lastly, thinking about how to prosper in the new reality, like now, no? So do you think that with this right approach, this crisis can also become an opportunity to advance and create added value in the tourist sector? Because I think that this is the question for everybody now in the sector.
There's an interesting quote, isn't there, that, you know, has been circulating on social media, you know, never let a good crisis go to waste. And I think some of the greatest innovations in history have been born out of crisis. Yeah. So I think that, you know, we've seen it as well in other sectors. So, for example, here in the UK, there was a shortage of ventilators. A Formula One team got together with doctors, and in 10 days they built a prototype of a new ventilator, which was in production and in hospitals a couple of weeks later. You know, that's the kind of thing that might take 5 to 10 years, and they did it in 10 days. So, you know, we can see in every sector that when faced with a crisis, that's when real, true, fast innovation happens. And I guess the trick for all of us is to really work out what innovations are going to last us into the long term, what's actually going to help us prosper in the long term. I think in terms of the tourism industry, there's no doubt that we have been, you know, we're the first affected, and we'll probably be the last to come out of this. But on the other hand, I think we've also, by so much of the world going into lockdown, not being able to travel, I think there is, of course, opportunity. There's opportunity to remind people why we travel, what it is they're missing in their lives by not traveling, what traveling does, not just for the economics in terms of destinations, but also in terms of fostering cultural understanding and better relationships across borders. And I think there will be be a real demand to travel. I know for myself, somebody that's used to traveling, I can't wait to get on a plane again and travel somewhere. So, you know, I think there is an opportunity for the tourist industry, and there's probably an opportunity for really rethinking the way we all do business. Is this the best way? Is it sustainable within our destinations? How can we re-engage with the local populations in our destinations to really, you know, make sure that they understand what the travel industry does for them as a destination? Before this, we were facing a backlash in terms of over-tourism. And now that you know, travel, people have seen the impacts of not having tourists. Of course, destinations and their residents want tourists to come back, but they want them to come back in a sustainable way. So I think there is a real opportunity out of this crisis to build those relationships in destinations and really to offer a sustainable tourism product for our industry and also for the local populations. And I think that would be a real win for everybody.
Yeah, in relationship with this, Margaret wants to ask you, what innovation do you think will survive in the tourist business?
Well, I mean, I don't have a crystal ball, is what I would say. But, you know, I think sustainable travel is going to be very important and really going to the heart and soul of destination, sustainability, corporate social responsibility. These are things that are not going to go away. And I think that they're going to be even more important. What is the purpose of a destination? How do you attract people and for what reason? I think communities and the people traveling are going to want more purpose out of their trips, be that for business or for pleasure. And so that's something that I think you know, is going to be accelerated by this crisis.
Yeah.
I'm sure that there are plenty of technology innovations that are out there. Certainly I'm more familiar with what I'm seeing in the meetings industry than tourism. But I'm sure that anything really that's accelerating what was already there is bound to stay with us for the long term. And of course, health and safety is going to be a top priority for travellers for quite some time to come, I have no doubt.
Yeah, will be part of our life, actually.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I guess that's a part of it, isn't it? For all of us, you know, we all going through the same psychological effects of being put into lockdown and then slowly coming out of lockdown. And what does that actually mean? And what it really means is that we have to learn to live and with this virus in the longer term, and we have to learn to assess our risk in a slightly different way. And that is something that as a world we're going to have to work out before we can go back to some kind of semblance of normality.
Yeah. Well, the next question is more close to your business. Will the meeting industry change really? How is your company prepared or adapting for the new normality?
Yeah, I think obviously there are a lot of changes afoot in the meetings industry. I do think, like travel and tourism, there'll be a huge pent-up demand for people to meet face-to-face. And I think the other thing is working remotely, as we all are in lockdown. We see how difficult it is to have brainstormings, to drive innovations, and to really accelerate research, vaccines, you know, everything that the business events industry does is about that acceleration of other businesses and motivation of people. So I don't think that element goes away, but without doubt in the trade show and the meetings industry, we really strip back to basics, looking at every element of our events. How can we run them differently? How can we make sure that our attendees, our delegates, and also our exhibitors not just feel safe, but are genuinely safe in this new normality? How can we ensure that we still deliver the value that those events have? And every meeting and event at the end of the day takes place in order to drive a specific business objective. And so really, I think in the meetings industry, we're really going back to what are those objectives and how do we deliver them? There's no doubt in the meetings industry that when meetings do come back online, they'll come back online with hybrid elements. I think that will be the case for the majority of events that take place. place. And I guess that will probably be with us, into the future as well, because once that genie's out of the bottle, why would you put that back in? If we can indeed find a way to truly extend and enhance the value of our events through technology, then I think that's a win-win for everybody.
Yes, yes. So you planning continue with all your event and trade fairs around the world when you normal calendar?
Yes, absolutely we are, but at the same time really looking very carefully at our digital products and how we can build on the live show and the live show experience with those digital products, and really how we can blend those together so it provides more value for our exhibitors and our attendees. And that's really what we would aim to do.
Because I think that of this critical and unusual situation on a global level, we have seen concept like a corporate social responsibility, sustainability, social equality, education and innovation, like you say, can more and more strong in our sector, in all the sector, but particularly in our sector. So do you think that the current situation will bring about a great sense of responsibility in everyone and through change in company in general, in our sector in particular?
I hope so. I mean, I always think, in times of crisis, we often say the world will be a better place after this. And that's not always borne out by reality, because of course we all need to get back to business. And once we do, some of these things can be forgotten. I guess in the end, it will be driven by demand. And I do ultimately think that there will be very strong demand to make sure that we come back as a sector in a more responsible way. People have been very connected to nature, more so than usual. They've seen the positive effects of slowing down. And I think it's hard to put that genie back into the bottle. People have experienced and seen for their own eyes what it is when the birdsong comes back. And so I think it's important as a sector that we recognise that and we build upon that, to build programmes that do have a true corporate social responsibility, that are really connected into doing good for our destinations. And I think if we do that, we'll be well rewarded by our customers.
And I think it is a very interesting opportunity for example, hotels or a complementary sector in the industry to promote or try to rebuild the business in relationship with this different topic, because it will be trend.
Absolutely. And, I think as consumers understand the devastation actually of them not going on their holidays, for example, or them not making their business trips. And I think they will want to see, when I go back to that destination, what can I do for that local community that was so hard hit by the fact that I couldn't come last year? And I think a lot of consumers, yes, they want their time on the beach, or they need to get their business meeting done. They have a purpose for going. But I think a lot of people will really take a lot more from their holidays or their business trips if they know that in some small way they're contributing to the wider economic purpose of that destination and that city and the local residents. And I think I guess it's about meaning, isn't it? What does it mean to travel, and how do we provide more meaning for our travelers and actually get them wanting to participate in that travel experience again? And part of that desire is if they feel that they can give back. Not 100% of people will want to do that, but I think it will be a significant proportion. And I do think the younger generations coming through, who have been through this trauma with us, are going, and we're already very focused on social responsibility and sustainability, will be even more so coming out of this.
Yeah, I am curious to know about a story, and I would like to share it with all of our participants today. Because I think that is inspiring. We could begin by saying that from a conversation in the backseat of the taxi company, whose global reach spread over 2 continents, was born. Could you tell us about this story?
Yes, I mean, really, it's a story of the launch of the IMEX Group, and it started with my father, Ray Bloom, who's our chairman, together with Paul Flackett, who I'm sure many people in the community knew well, and he sadly passed away a few years ago. And Paul and Ray, had worked since the 1980s in the exhibition world. They had launched and developed EIBTM, which was subsequently sold to Reed Exhibitions. And really, a few years later, sitting in the back of a taxi, they had a conversation about what it would be to relaunch a show. You have to remember as well, that was just after the dot-com era. Websites were a new thing, and they were really talking, even back then, how could they launch a show with a really fantastic technology platform to really support and enhance and deliver more value to the exhibitors and attendees. And even back then, they were thinking in those terms, and it was very early days. And it was a time when people were asking whether the internet would stop travel and tourism or stop meetings and events. And of course, what we've seen all the way along is technology has actually driven more value into the face-to-face interaction. It's changed how we've done things, but for the better. So that's really where their conversation started. They obviously, did their research to see whether another show in the marketplace would be of value to exhibitors. They realized if they did things a little bit differently, again with purpose and soul, really focusing in on delivering that value to the exhibitors and attendees, but also value to the industry. And so that's really the foundation that IMEX, that both our shows and that our company sits on. And that's really why we do so many things within the industry, like our policy forums, our future leaders forums, our free education programs. In the early days, we had wildcard schemes where we would introduce totally new destinations to the industry. And we do that on an ad hoc basis still. Our awards programs, research, all of these things are to deliver value not only back to our immediate attendees and exhibitors, but also to try to grow and develop the industry as a whole. So those are the foundations. It started with that conversation, and from that we built IMEX in Frankfurt and IMEX America. I can't take any credit for the idea for IMEX in Frankfurt. That came from Ray and Paul, and I was lucky enough, as you said at the beginning, to be a part of that very small launch team, many of whom are still with us today.
Yeah. It's a fantastic history, really. I have another question came from our audience. Technological innovation is a pillar in the organization, but it is more than ever a solution to better achieve business objectives. This is the first question. What will be the technological trends that will help better leadership in the post-COVID era?
Oh, it's a big question. I mean, it's hard to know. It's hard to know what technology trends are going to lead to better leadership. I guess going back to that very first question, in terms of leadership, I think it's, as I said, the level of communication is so important. And I think what we've learned during lockdown is, for a relatively small company such as mine, we've got 60 people, it's easy enough for me to see people on a day-to-day basis in the office, communicate with them very directly. But in big corporations, that's not always the case with a CEO. And we've seen a lot during this period that CEOs, even of very big corporations, have taken the time to have town halls with their teams, to really be there for their teams. And the technology isn't new, but perhaps we're using it more regularly. And so from a leadership perspective, I think technology allows us to be much more present with our teams and also with our clients very easily and to be very accessible. And I think that's got to be a good thing for leadership in general. In terms of other technology trends, as I say, a lot of these technologies are not new. The type of technologies that we're utilizing, say, in the meetings industry to develop online content, but everybody's really working out new ways to use them and to make them far more professional, to make the experience of attending an online session as interactive as possible. So that's really, I think, where the next stage will be. How do you develop that interaction online, and how do you develop those connections? I would say I don't think that technology will ever get us to a place that we will be face to face. And I'm not saying that just because I'm in the business events industry, but I think it's the interactions you have online are far more transactional and less relationship driven. So it's far harder to develop those connections, those deep connections. But I think they're probably, if we look to the next 3 to 5 years, the technology innovations that we'll see will allow better interaction and better connectivity between people. And I think that would be an important part of our mix. And I think that it will be impossible not to include that within our future.
Oh, absolutely. We need to be prepared, actually. This kind of tools like Zoom or others is something new between the brackets for a lot of people, and they use it now, and it's so popular. Maybe in 2 or 3 months, if you see, it was absolutely different 6 months ago. So yeah, this is the beginning for the technological tools, of course, for everybody. Currently, many entrepreneurs and professionals in the sector are going through tough time. This is true. You have an area that you call the Inspiration Center in your website. We all need little resilience, inspirations, new ideas. The crisis forces us, of course, all of us, to reinvent our business quite a lot. We mentioned this. As a businesswoman, what would you recommend us? What is the way to do this?
There are a few things, I suppose, that I do. One thing I think I always find useful is to read quite widely from both within the industry to see what's going on, but also outside of the industry. And I think that's really important for business owners to really understand what's going on in different industries. You can learn a lot and often then be the first mover in your own industry. So I think that's really important, to take part and connect with as many people and colleagues and partners as possible, and to really look after as much as possible your clients and also your supply chain as well, and look, when I say look after, that may just be keeping in touch with people, but really taking this time to understand their needs of your clients and also those partners that you rely upon. And I think that will help us all to come out of the crisis better, understanding each other better, and really learning how to work in partnership. We're all suffering in this crisis, and so it's important that we try to support each other as much as we can, so that we can all come out of this as best as we possibly can, and have a healthy industry at the end of it. Because at the end of the day, what we do in travel tourism and meetings and events, we're a very big ecosystem actually, and we rely upon each other and our partners to make our programs happen. And so that's what I would really recommend. And also in terms of resilience, really focusing on what that means to you personally and what you need to do personally to build that resilience in yourself, and taking some time as well. For some people it's exercise, for other people it's reading, for others it's going for a walk in nature. Whatever that is, I think it's really important not to work yourself into the ground, because actually your decisions are less effective and your thinking is less effective. And we all know that, but it's hard to step away sometimes. And the other thing I do is I listen to a lot of podcasts, again, outside of the industry and inside, but I really enjoy the ones that talk about whether it's politics or leadership styles, and it really just gives me ideas, and I enjoy doing that, and it's very calming as well.
Yeah, we have now a question from Konstantin. He said, you are talking of value. The client have less funds to spend for travel, and travel agents have less incoming due to airlines not contributing to agents and no show less empathy for proper refunds. How do you address airlines who also wants to increase airfares with not assistance to travel agents? I think that this is a very big issue, the relationship between the airlines and the travel agents, because they are was in the middle of this crisis. And if you see, the country depends, the region, Europe maybe is different to the rest of the continents, because this is a big issue, because we need travel agency, we need airlines, because this is part of the big area and job for everybody, no?
Absolutely. I mean, I guess I would say, look, I'm not in your business. I'm very much in the business events industry and trade show industry. So I wouldn't like to profess my expertise on negotiations with airlines. But I guess, at the heart, this comes down to that partnership approach. Are we, the airlines and the travel agents, can we work in partnership at the end of the day so that we all survive this? It is, at the end of the day, a symbiotic relationship. And I guess in terms of that negotiating position, and I'm sure, people like the WTTC who are working on this every day will be trying to impress upon airlines the fact that they need the travel agents as well. And whilst airlines certainly are suffering, travel agents are as well. And if the airlines don't have the travel agents, they lose a lot. So I guess it is about, what I talked about right at the beginning, which is about that symbiotic relationship, understanding your supply chain and your supplier ecosystem so that we can support each other to come out of this. If we don't, we will be less of an industry at the end of this crisis.
Absolutely. I think that they are a symbiotic relationship that you can change. They need to be how they can balance this relationship again.
Absolutely. And I think that's correct. That word balance is very important. And that's the same in so many things. You can apply that to so many things. And we and they need to find the right balance so that everybody can survive.
Yeah. Okay. Another question from Maria Elena. She said that what would you think will be the response for the cruisers in order to decide to do a cruise again? What do you think they expect? Yeah, this is another maybe big question, but you have a lot of clients from the cruise ships in your trade shows. So what is your feeling about this part of the industry?
Yeah, so we do have a number of our exhibitors are the cruise lines, and I've been speaking to a couple of them over the last few months, and certainly they're focusing very strongly on health and safety. So for example, some of them already have in their boats these air filtration systems so that the air isn't circulating the boats, and they've always had that, and they've been built like that, but they've never talked about it because it wasn't something that anybody understood or was interested in. So they're looking at things like that. They're looking at how they could do cruises without stoppages, stopping in the ports and what that would mean. But I think at the end of the day, as a potential, attendee on a cruise ship, you want to know that it's safe and secure, that the health and safety protocols are there. You want to know that you're going to be welcomed in port if indeed there are going to be stops along the way, and you want to know that the protocols if somebody does get sick on a ship, because those are the key issues. I think there is a really strong, loyal cruiser sector of the tourism industry, people who love their cruises, and I think they'll be keen to get back on a cruise with those safety protocols and with those questions answered, and so really I think that's the key thing that the cruise lines will be focusing on.
And again, it means about communication, because I know very well this sector, and they did everything about the protocols, but maybe they not communicate in this moment because nobody was interested in know about it. But now, yes, they need to increase the communication for be transparent and transmit this situation very clear for the potential clients.
Absolutely. And, some of the smaller ships may initially have more success, if they can limit the number of people on board, if they can do antibody tests or temperature checks in advance, and give people that comfort. And certainly cruises for meetings and events, again, if it's a small, contained, curated group of people that is controlled on the way in, maybe, some of those cruises that do go for a short period, maybe 3 or 4 days, because it's a meeting or an event, they don't need to make stops in port, and that could be a good way to start as well. So I think there are options, and I certainly look forward to seeing the cruise lines starting to come on board again. I do know that cruise ships are still being built. I know very well a trade show for the cruise line industry taking place later in the year. It's for the really the interior design, and their trade show is going well, and they expect to put it on, and they've got good demand from both the buyers from the cruise lines, but also those designers. So there is activity in that sector. It's clearly been enormously hard hit, but I hope that it comes back soon.
Yeah. Augusto from Italy is a question and reflection. What would you say about Zoom communication that has now a more value that is higher of most airlines together? Yes, because now the companies, they are absolutely popular, and they have enormous prices of value in the market, of course. But the things change very quickly in the sector. This is maybe the thing that we need to understand.
Absolutely. I suppose, if this has taught us nothing else, it's the uncertainty that exists around us all. And that's very difficult to deal with. Certainly as a leader it is. But there are no certainties. But, Zoom, yes, it's like Google, it's become a verb. You talk about Googling information, and you talk about Zooming, even if you're using GoToMeeting or Cisco WebEx, so it's become part of the lexicon. It's like Hoover back in the day, So, no surprises there, but I would say nothing is certain these days.
This is the opportunity that we talked a few minutes ago, no? Because they create a product in a niche. So
absolutely,
this was the successful.
Exactly, and it shows, none of us have a crystal ball, so who knows what tomorrow's product will be. But if you keep innovating, if you keep really looking for what problem can you solve for your clients, where is the value, where can you add value, and keep trying. Hopefully somebody on this call will have their Zoom moment in the future.
Another question from Silva in relationship with your business. What about IMEX Las Vegas this year? It is officially going to be virtual or not?
So yeah, thanks for the question. We committed a few weeks ago to the industry that we would make the decision by mid-June to give us and the industry time to prepare. So that's something that we're looking at right now very strongly, obviously talking to our partners and in Las Vegas and around the world. And we will, we will be, as I say, committing to making that decision by the middle of the month.
Okay. Simon, say, do you see a change in the way that management will treat their employer as a result of this pandemic, of this crisis?
How they'll create?
Yeah, he tried to say to you if you feel that the management is different now in relationship with employers as a result of this pandemic, of this crisis.
I think it depends how, as an employer, you have communicated and treated your employees during this period, honestly. I think there's a massive opportunity right now to really build loyalty amongst your team. I think there's also an opportunity on the negative side for employers to lose good people if they don't feel that during this crisis or coming out of it that they've been treated in the right way. And I think it can go both ways. In terms of how we work in the future, I think, again, those companies like mine, who were largely office-based, who had flexible working policies, but not, work any time at home that you want. I think for us, the way our teams work in the future, the number of days they work in the office versus at home, the hours they work, I think that's all out of the window. And I think that the flexible sort of work-life approach, I think, has been accelerated by 10, 20 years. And I see that as a great thing, actually. It was something that we were making baby steps towards, and then, suddenly in 3 days, we were there. So I think how we manage that in the future is going to cause us as sort of employers challenges, how you manage the flexible working approach. But I think people will want to retain a lot of that.
Yeah, and the government wants to put on the table this topic for all the companies too, I think.
Yes, absolutely. And that's a whole impact for cities, of course, because
exactly.
if, you think about the ecosystem around, say, the City of London, the restaurants, the taxi drivers, the gyms, because of the number of people going into work, and if that significantly changes in a short period of time, that's going to have an impact on our cities. So, there are a lot of question marks around that. I do believe that our teams are going to want to come back into the office. I just believe that the flexibility they'll want to also be able to work at home when they want and how they want is going to change.
I know that is absolutely difficult to think about it because we don't know really what will be happen. But how do you imagine the future of travel after this pandemic? What is your feeling, your experience? You're born in Germany, you live and study in UK, but you travel a lot. So, and many people's. What is your feeling? What kind of things will be happen or will be different?
Yeah, so just to say, I'm born and bred in the UK, so I just put that out there. Yeah.
Okay.
My name is German because of my father-in-law.
Okay,
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the future of travel, who knows? As a traveller myself, I want it to be the same. That's my desire. I think at the end of the day, it's easy as well during the middle of a crisis to say everything will be different afterwards. And I think there will be differences. Again, we're going to be much more aware of the health and safety, things that we never thought about before. We'll start to take for granted, getting onto a plane and wiping down, everything around you. You would have looked like a very strange person just 3 months ago doing that, whereas now that's going to be normal. Wearing masks as you travel, all of these things will become normalized and will become desensitized to them. But at the end of the day, I also hope that we learn to live with our new normality, because we can't stay in lockdown forever as a society. We have to learn how to make our way through the world, how to travel again, how to get on an aeroplane. whilst, you know, managing the risk for ourselves and for our families. And I think that's probably the key difference, you know, in the psyche. When you're taking a trip, it's not just about yourself, it's you're thinking about that whole ecosystem around you and the risk that you're taking for yourself and for them. And so that's going to change psychologically how we think about travel, and maybe the extent to which we travel as frequently in the shorter term. But I believe that people want to travel, you know. It's something that has exploded over the past 20 years with, you know, cheap flights. Before that, it was growing exponentially. And I don't think you can put that genie back in the bottle as well. I don't think people are going to be happy to spend 4 days getting from the UK to the south of Spain. You know, people want their flights back, and they do want to have their holidays again, and they do want to meet their business contacts face to face. So I do think that we have to be realistic about our short and medium term. But I think if we look in the long term, I think we also have to be careful not to overreact, and not Absolutely. To say, because in lockdown, in the middle of a pandemic, this is what we're dealing with, it's going to be the same in 5 years' time.
Yeah, or less, you know, because
or less.
Exactly. We are talking about maybe this summer in Europe, July, August, September, October. But at the end of this year, maybe the things will be changed. And of course, the next year. So we don't know really. Now it's very, you know, all the people feel afraid about travel or about change something, because was a shock for everybody actually. Nobody expect this. So this is the first reaction. But what will be happen in 6 or 1 year? Maybe you are right. We will Absolutely. Have another normality with more prevention, but the same things.
And I think, you know, if you look in Asia, where they have managed things differently because of their experience with SARS and with MERS and H1N1, they're able, because they manage things differently, because of that experience, to come out of things and lockdown much more quickly. And they're also, you know, if you look, restaurants are open, life is going on as normal, people are in their offices, and they're starting that interregional travel again. And when you look at, say, events that are taking place, yes, people have the masks, people a little bit more distance, they have the protocols, but they're going about their business in a normal way, because they are more used to doing this, and it's not as big a shock to them. So I very much hope that human nature is such that over time we get over that shock and learn to live with the new risks that are in our life. You know, once upon a time, the new risk was crossing the road when it went from horse and cart to, you know, a vehicle going at 20 or 30 miles per hour. And so we have to learn what those risks mean for us and how we can live with them naturally. And, you know, our best case scenario, of course, is a vaccine, and that would change things again. But in the absence of that, I think, you know, slowly, as a human race, we've done this throughout time. We've learned what the risks are to us and how to manage those, and we will do that with this as well. And it's very hard to think about that when we're in the middle of the crisis, but I do believe ultimately I'm fairly optimistic that, you know, we're very innovative, creative human beings. So
You're very
we'll manage
positive.
That. I'm always, there's always a silver lining. Yeah, it's a very difficult time for all of us. But we have to keep our eye on that sort of longer term. And I always say, you know, don't overreact for the longer term. We have to be able to quickly adapt for what we see happening at the time, of course, but not assume that the conditions that we're living under now are going to be the conditions that we need to live under in a year, 2 years, or 3 years.
Yeah, and we have a question from Josefa from Spain. Do you think it is good time for all the teams to be leaders?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Yes, I totally agree. And I think this is what you're getting at, that anybody can lead at any level. And it's about the qualities that you display in your everyday interactions with your colleagues, with your clients, the communication, how you communicate, taking responsibility, being proactive. And, you know, anybody can do that, and it doesn't matter what your title is. And I think if you show those qualities, you rise. And you rise very quickly, especially in a crisis. So it's a great opportunity for people at all levels to really rise quickly and show what they're made of.
Yeah, sure, I agree 100%. We have another question. It's about the new protocols, the safety protocols in the industry. We have the opportunity for see something about the airlines protocols, the hotels protocol, but what about the trade fairs protocol? What is you are thinking, or in your group are planning to be prepared for reopen everything?
Yes, so that's a great question. So UFI, AIPC, ICA, CISO, AEO, so these are all the main trade associations for the trade show industry, but also the convention centres, have got together and are have already put out white papers with suggested protocols and are working together to really set those up, certification programs for the convention centres, but also for us organisers to really think about every element of our event. And that's our challenge. We have to really rethink the whole show and the health and safety protocols, the flow of the events. How do we minimize sort of people going back and forth and crossing each other? Do we look at one-way systems, giving more space between the booths, more space on each booth, looking at contactless entry points, so you know, where you can print a badge at home and then just scan it in. All of these things are being looked at. And of course, on the venue side, working very strongly with our venues, some of which are looking at things like thermal scanners or UV cleaning concepts, which kills the virus, obviously upping our cleaning before, during and after the event. So there are 100 measures that are out there at the moment. For us as a team, we're currently going through all of them and really trying to apply those to our shows in our venues to see what we can reasonably do to, again, to keep the show with the value and objectives that it has, but make sure it's a safe environment that people want to be attending.
Exactly, because normally it's massive. You have food there, the bathroom, so the extra services that you have around the trade shows.
Correct.
This is a challenge.
Absolutely. Oh, it's a massive challenge. There's no way of getting around that, and the way you utilize the space, I think, is going to be very different in the short and medium term, to try to minimize crowds, really. I mean, that's what you're trying to do, trying to spread that flow out so that people have enough space to be comfortable and be sufficiently distanced.
Yeah. So what is your final message for us, for our panel, for our members? Something that you want to recommend, to share with us?
I suppose my final message would be what I said before, which is, you know, we need to be optimistic about the future and work positively towards our future. Travel and tourism, as I said, has been massively impacted, as well as business events. However, their underlying value hasn't gone away. The reason people want to travel, the reason people want to attend business events or live events is still very much there. And actually, I think there'll be pent-up demand for it. So we should be very optimistic about the future, but realistic about what we're living through now, and building our resilience to be able to adapt quickly to whatever that future brings. But let's be optimistic about the fact that we will come out of this and we will have a strong industry again. I have no doubt about that.
Exactly. Resilience, flexibility. I think that is the most important concept for the next future, and try to be positive, try to be, you know, more resilient and adapting, for be successful at the end, because everything, you know, will be continued. So it's a new reality and we need to accept and try to be positive. So thank you so much. It was a pleasure,
Thank you.
Carina.
It was a pleasure.
Yeah, to share with all of you and our panel members this moment. And I wish you the best. And I will see you in the next IMEX trade show.
Absolutely, I'll look forward to it. And thank you to everyone for joining. Really appreciated this opportunity to speak with you. Thank you.
A big kiss, and thank you for all the members who join us during this hour in Skål International. So thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.